MrCreepyPasta. Yay! Do I look how you expected me to look? I diet a lot to get like this. I really hope that that's what you wanted. Would you prefer something like this? Hi guys. I can't see any of you because of the light, so I'm going to go ahead and grab this to make it a little bit easier on me. Oh. You seen my face? I'm not too good on this.
Hold that, Billy.
Okay. Do you guys want to hear scary stories? Yeah. I assumed that you all came here because you didn't like scary stories and you wanted to hear non-scary ones. I got sad ones. Okay, do you want the scariest story you've ever told then? Yeah. Okay, everybody strap in because this is really scary. This is really scary, okay? This is super scary. This is the story of a day where there was all this blood. A man was walking around and there was blood that was just coming out of him everywhere. There was so much blood that it filled up an elevator. He went to the store and there was just blood all over the place. People were slipping in it and they were all grossed out. He tried to go swimming and all the sharks went nuts and bitten everybody. He got chased by all the vampires ever. One time, the blood got a kid and a dog. At the end of the day, everyone decided that they would send him to space so that he would stop getting blood everywhere. And the scariest part is that that man was you. Or he was a lady if you're a lady. And you forgot this ever happened. That was scary, right, Billy? That was a scary one, wasn't it? Okay, by a show of hands, who here has actually been to one of the panels I've gone to that I've done before? Either in like San Japan or here. I can't see any of you, so I'm going to assume that was everyone. So, a lot of you guys have probably heard me do this story before, because it's one of my favorite stories to be able to do. I know if you guys saw me over at San Japan, you probably heard Junior do it. Miss Shadow Lovely, MrCreepyPasta Jr., some of my really good friends. Miss Shadow Lovely's here with me again this year as well. If you guys haven't seen her in the vendor hall, definitely check her out. But I love to do this story because it allows me to play a fun little game I like to call Weeding Out the Weak Stomachs. So go ahead and take a look around you. You guys can probably see more of yourselves than I can see of you. And by the time I finish this story, oh yeah, there we go. By the time I finish this story, this room will not be nearly as full as it is. And anybody who was there that is no longer there, they're the weak. I love symmetry. I'm not sure exactly why, but I've loved it since I was a kid. Most children are messy and forgetful of their things, but not me. I knew everything had its place, and in my room, everything was right where it belonged. My parents didn't have it. My grandparents didn't have it either. Not a single person in my family had it. I started referring to it as it because I truly believe it's a thing inside me, a stowaway that shouldn't be there, but lives inside me. It's a need. A desire, a longing to be perfect, perfect on both sides. As an adult, I'm at the point where I can't live my life normally. I can't keep a job. Women don't stay with me because I can't handle it. Honestly, I don't even care when they leave. They're messy and make things difficult. They roll over to my side of the bed instead of staying on their own. They leave dishes on one side of the sink and not the other. I can't work anymore, so when they leave for the day, I have to stay home and fix everything. It's a relief when they leave for good. That feeling never lasts, though. Eventually, it comes back and finds something else that needs fixing. Well, you may be asking, why would I seek out relationships to begin with if I can't stand them? Well, it's hard for me to sleep in the exact middle of the bed all night without moving. Other than the relationship problems, my life is pretty much in order. I say pretty much because there is one last issue that must be dealt with. See, I have what's called heterochromia iridium, or two different colored irises. My right eye is cornflower blue, my left pale green. Both my parents have cornflower blue eyes. My siblings and cousins as well. My green eye is the broken one. It makes me unbalanced. Every time I look at myself in the mirror, it stares right back at me. It's all I think about now. Everything is in its right place except my green little mistake. You know, it didn't hurt at first. When I dug the spoon under my eye. It didn't even hurt when it popped out and was hanging by my cheek. Was it shock that was keeping the pain away, or was it? I snipped the optic nerve and blotted the warm fluids that were streaming down my face. My vision being cut in half was a strange sensation. What was left of the dangling flesh I placed back inside the now empty hole. I bandaged the wound, rinsed the spoon, and I went to sleep. And I woke up happy. I slept better than I had in years. It was finally done. I was fixed. I got out of bed and stumbled to the bathroom. My body ached. My head was on fire. I flipped the switch in the bathroom. The light was blinding. I slowly removed the bandage that was soaked with blood and was sticking to my face like tape. When I looked up to the mirror, my stomach turned. Only then had I realized what I had done to myself, and I can't believe it. There was a hole in the left side of my face. But not the right side. I was unbalanced. Again. It was much harder digging out the second eye. My hands were shaky, and when I dug the spoon in, I missed several times, puncturing the pupil 3 times before I got it in the right place. Once the eye popped out, I reached for the scissors to finish the job. The blood from the previous night had dried on the blades, so the scissors didn't cut very well. You know, when you were a kid in elementary school, and your teacher made you cut construction paper for art projects, did you ever try to cut too many paper at once? But the scissors couldn't take it, and the blades would kind of fold over each other, and the paper would get pinned between them. That's what happened with my eye. The optic nerve was pinned between the 2 plates. It was stuck, and I tried desperately and frantically to make it unstuck. I slipped on the blood and started falling to the floor. Reflexes kicked in, and I let go of my eye to try to break my fall with my hand. The weight of the stuck scissors on my hanging eye was unbearable. I knew I couldn't stand it long enough to make it to the kitchen to get a knife. So I pulled. I pulled it straight out of my head. I felt the flesh tear straight from inside of my skull. I felt it rip and spew liquids everywhere. I knew I was crying, but there was no telling the tears from the blood from the ocular fluid. When I heard the wet slap of bloody flesh against the tile floor, I knew I was done. I knew it was done. I could live my life now without having to see people's awful, messy, uneven lives. The relief washed over me, and I knew it would last this time. I had never felt this way before, never had this much hope. And as I lay in my bathroom on that cold, wet, sticky tile, I smiled for the first time in years. That's symmetry. You stayed than I thought you would. Everybody take note who left. Well, I'm more to say than I thought you would. Okay, so everybody who came here, thank you so much for coming over to the panel, the MrCreepyPasta Storytime panel. This is my 4th year being here at Mizuumi-con, and I absolutely love it. This is the first convention I actually ever did as a YouTuber, and I love coming back here. So thank you guys for coming to the panel. And for those of you who don't know or didn't come to my panels before, that was a creepypasta. If you were wondering what a creepypasta actually is, it's scary stories. But I like to think of as urban legends that are told around the internet. Me, myself, I'm MrCreepyPasta. I hope most of you guys know who I am at some point. You've seen the channel. If not, please go subscribe to the channel because it's keeps me from dying. But no, I'm a YouTuber. I tell horror stories. In case you haven't been able to get that, that's what I do. I have a voice to tell horror stories. The music that you hear, the piano music, is actually one of my good friends from Germany, Yuji. This is one of his albums on iTunes. I'm just going to go ahead and just give as many product placements as I can within a single panel. But no, that was a creepypasta. I like to think of these as wonderful little horror stories from the internet, wonderful little urban legends, and a lot of them kind of are based in fiction. Some of them have some kind of basis in facts. You know, we weren't here in San Antonio. You guys have heard like the story of the donkey lady, things like that. The onion house, the railroad tracks. You guys know all the stories around here. So these stories are from around the United States, around the world. Some of them based in fiction, some of them based in fact. And a lot of them leave you thinking with some really amazing things. Here's one of the stories I don't normally do at conventions. But I like doing this one a lot because it messes with people. And it doesn't really feel like one of those stories that will mess with you. But it kind of strikes a chord for everybody. And this is really dark. So anybody who's not really prepared for a dark, scary, disgusting, gross panel, here's your warning. This is called the thought experiment. Welcome inside the mind of Ellie Bloom. Now in a few moments, Ellie is going to die, but don't be upset, she's 92. She had a long and happy life. Also, she doesn't actually exist. How's that, she said? It's true. Ellie is a thought experiment. We're creating her to illustrate an idea. She doesn't have to be old, female, or even named Ellie. She could be your nephew, your cousin, just a friend. For this experiment, all we need is someone that you might know. Okay? So, let's use Ellie. We'll say she's 92. And that she's your granddaughter. Granddaughter, you say. Just play along. And be respectful, because we're in the mind of your dying granddaughter. Here it comes. See that wall of darkness rushing towards us? That's death. Ellie's brain is shutting down. The lights are going out. Everything she ever was, everything she's ever known, cell by cell and memory by memory, it's going dark. Don't worry though. This isn't the end for Ellie. It's true what they say. As long as someone holds you in their memory, you'll live on. Ellie has loving grandchildren to remember her. So, why are we here? Actually, see, this is your time to go. Do you see? Ellie was the last person alive who actually knew you. The last person with memories of you as a living, breathing human being. From now on, you can only be a stranger to people, if they think of you at all. This is the moment that you pass from living memory into history. This is the moment where you truly die. Oops. There go the lights. Goodbye, Ellie. Goodbye. You. That was a thought experiment. If you want to talk about what's going to keep you up at night, that's the one that keeps you up at night. I have a bunch of these right here. So like, I like to do these kind of scary stories. When I was a kid, and you guys probably came here last year, you heard me do this one. This is one of the ones I love to do at conventions because it takes me back to that real kind of feeling of storytelling. When I got into doing like YouTube, when I got into doing MrCreepyPasta stuff, there was a couple things that actually did inspire it. I didn't really want to do it like as a YouTube channel. I just had no other means of doing this. And I mean like, it's Gary, like he wasn't my best friend when I got started. He was something in the closet. But when I started doing this, a couple things inspired me. 1940s radio and things like that. You guys have seen like a lot of the radio dramas they did, Jeff the Killer versus Jane the Killer. Those were all inspired by 1940s radio. So the sound effects and the music and everything like that is all scored to make it get that feeling of old-time radio. One of the other things was when I was a kid in elementary school, and a lot of you guys probably had this. When I was a kid in elementary school, a storyteller kind of came, like in October, and they wanted to tell scary stories. And he would always tell like family-friendly scary stories. There were ones like Taylor Poe or, what was the other one? Like scary stories to tell in the dark kind of things. You guys have probably had that before, right? Yeah. And when I was a kid, like the guy who actually came, he told Taylor Poe, and that scared the crap out of me. Like I was like, I had nightmares for like 2 weeks because I was a little kid. And I always wanted to give that kind of feeling to people. I wanted to tell a story that could really kind of give them nightmares for an extended amount of time. And it didn't have to curse, I didn't have to talk about poop, and I wanted to do something that was really good, and really scary, and really not too gross. Where's my staff, by the way? I've got a question. Can I sit? Is that bad? Can I do that? No? I don't know where my staff is. Okay, cool. Where? Okay. Can I sit there? Is that bad? No, not that staff. I mean like the actual staff. Okay, but whatever. Whoever's doing the lights. I can see you. Nope? Okay, cool. This is one of those stories that I want to be able to tell. It's really scary, and it doesn't really have, it really kind of goes back to that feeling of old time storytelling. So in 1800s Georgia, there lived a wealthy young woman in a grand plantation house. The woman's name was Annabelle Walters, and she inherited her fortune from her father, who made his money in cotton farming. Her father had been cruel to his slaves, but tender to his wife and daughter. In 1864, baby Annabelle almost died in a fire set by William Sherman's soldiers on their march to the sea. Her mother saved her from death, but could not save her left arm, which was so badly burned that it had to be amputated. The rest of Annabelle's body and her pretty face remained unscathed, but her father wanted the replacement for her arm to be as beautiful and perfect as the rest of her. So, I can, yes! Cool, now I can actually see your body. Yeah, cool, okay. Her mother saved her from death. But could not save her left arm, which was so badly burned that it had to be amputated. The rest of Annabelle's body and her pretty face remained unscathed, but her father wanted the replacement for her arm to be as beautiful and perfect as the rest of her. So when Annabelle was a teenager, her father had an arm cast out of solid gold, and everyone marveled at how shiny and yet how lifelike Annabelle's new arm was, even if it was cold and artificial. Annabelle's mother died of fever not long after the casting of the golden arm, and a few years after that, her father died in a steamboat explosion. And so, young, lovely Annabelle Walters lived by herself in her father's old mansion, with only an old dog named Ranger to keep her company. Of course, many bachelors wanted to marry Miss Walters for her wealth. Now, they talked of love and affection, but Annabelle was no fool, and turned down many a scheming suitor. But George was different. His family didn't come from wealth. He had been a self-made rancher out west, but most importantly, he truly loved Annabelle for who she was, and not for her money. The two wed and shared several happy years together, and then one dreary October, Annabelle fell sick with the same fever that killed her mother. The doctors, the best and most expensive doctors in the country, did all they could but could not save her. So by mid-November, lovely Annabelle lay on her deathbed, her beloved George beside her in the final hours. "George, darling, before I pass, I have one last request to impart upon you," she said. "Yes, my love, anything. What is it?" he replied. "My arm. My golden arm. It's my most precious possession. More important to me than this house or any of my jewelry, please. Bury me in the ground with my golden arm, said Annabelle. Yes, Annabelle, if that's what you desire, I shall, said George. Promise me, George, it's my final will upon this earth, she said. George gulped. I promise. I promise to bury you with your golden arm, darling. Annabelle fell silent and was dead within a few minutes. George and a few of Annabelle's cousins were the only ones to attend her funeral, and she was buried in the Walters family cemetery, down the road from the mansion. In accordance with his wife's last wish, George buried Annabelle with her golden arm. The night following the burial, George was sitting in front of the fireplace, Ranger the dog asleep at his side. He thought about his future, his love life, his living arrangements. And then he thought about his financial situation. See, neither him nor, of course, Annabelle had worked a day during their whole marriage. The Walters family fortune had paid for all that they wanted, but that money, between the doctor's fees and Annabelle's lavish headstone, well, that money was nearly gone. George had become lazy and accustomed to the leisured life. If only he had another source of wealth. Then he remembered the golden arm. That arm was made out of solid gold. It must be worth a small fortune itself, he thought, but it was already buried with its owner, as per her final request. But wouldn't Annabelle want him to be happy and not destitute? And hadn't she been a bit delirious towards the end with that fever thrashing about her brain? Surely, George thought, the poor woman wasn't even thinking straight towards the end, and now, well, now she was dead, and could not care whether she was buried with a golden arm or not. George made a decision. He put on his cloak, for the air was chilled that November night, and he brought a lantern, for the sky and the road were as dark as a cave. He creaked open the door to the tool shed and grabbed the shovel, the strongest looking one that he could find, for he would have 6 feet down to dig through cold, hard ground. The sky was filled with clouds. No moon nor stars greeted George on his solitary march to Annabelle's grave. The wind whispered through the grass and the naked branches like the voices of creatures best unseen. George hugged his cloak tight around him and held his lantern high. Within his tiny circle of yellow light, shadows danced like madmen, and George felt his heart quicken as he approached the cemetery. George found the right headstone and plunged his shovel into the hard earth. The work got harder with each shovelful of dirt, but George worked faster as the wind picked up, and he shivered thinking of the fire back inside. Sooner than George expected, the shovel thud against wood. George cleared away the final layer of soil and opened the coffin. And there lay Annabelle, as fair and beautiful as in the prime of her life, clasped across her chest. Her golden arm shimmered in the lantern light. Pushing aside flimsy thoughts of betrayal and robbery, George snatched the arm and slammed the coffin shut. The arm was cold as ice, and George set it beside him as he shoveled the dirt back on top of his wife. And then he scooped up his treasure and began the long walk back to the house. The wind grew stronger and stronger as he walked, gusting against his cloak and making the lantern sway in his hand. The wind whistled, and George thought he heard a voice, carried high and faint across the fields. He froze, eyes wide, glanced from one side and then the other. He saw no one. But with each step on the frosty ground, the wind's voice grew more distinct. Who's got my golden arm? George hurried his walk, but the words followed him louder and louder. Who's got my golden arm? The terrified man at last reached the mansion's door, which he flung open, slammed, and locked behind him. He ran to the parlor where Ranger's ears perked up and the friendly hound dog greeted its master. The fire was down to embers, but even that small heat felt wonderful as George dropped his shovel and sat down. Then he heard that ghastly voice again. Who's got my golden arm? George couldn't place the sound source. It seemed to come from the chimney, the windows, the door, all at once. He clutched that heavy golden arm close to himself and ran to the window to shut the curtains, but still that forlorn and angry cry continued. "Who's got my golden arm?" Ranger barked and growled at the east wall, the one facing the cemetery. The wind made the boards of the house creak and moan, and the windows rattled, and that voice went on louder than ever. "Who's got my golden arm?" A gust of wind came straight down the chimney and put out the embers, and George ran with that golden arm upstairs, down the hall to his bedroom, his heart thumping and his teeth chattering. Ranger's bark boomed and then was overpowered by the slam of the front door being thrown off its hinges, and the wind screamed through the house. "Who's got my golden arm?" George threw himself under the bedsheets and clutched that icy, cursed golden arm, and it felt heavy as iron. He felt the feeling of the wind slam open the bedroom door, and then the wind stopped. And there was silence, followed by slow, shuffling steps, and tiny thuds as pieces of frozen grave dirt fell to the floor. George held his breath and prayed silently as the ghastly footsteps stopped just next to his bed. "Who's got my golden arm?" You got it! That was the golden arm by Jared Wilson. Did you jump? Hi. The lights are on point, man. You got this. Yeah. Did you jump? Was that good? Time to go. Okay, so you guys have probably noticed, like, if you guys have seen me on my channel, seen me like this or with Billy, I'm not really as serious as a lot of people took me to be as in the beginning of my channel. A lot of people thought that I'd be totally like long black hair brooding in the corner and always lived in my basement kind of guy. And I spend a lot of time in the studio, but I'm not that. I'm really kind of chipper. I talk to a plastic skeleton, you know, like, I'm not that kind of person. And I mean, the real thing about that is that I really believe that comedy and horror kind of go hand in hand. A real big thing for me whenever I do like intros and stuff was Tales from the Crypt. And the Crypt Keeper was never too serious. Like, yeah, it was morbid, but it wasn't too serious. He was always very silly. And I think that was really like how I want to be. I'm a really kind of silly kind of person. So a lot of the stories I like to do deal a lot with comedy. And one of the best ones I've ever done is when I worked with Barnabas Damos. You guys have ever seen him on YouTube. I worked with Barnabas Damos to put together this story. And this story is called Charlie the Comedian's Going Places. And it's one of my favorite ones because I can finally get to act like a comedian as opposed to acting like a horror storyteller. Also, this is another reading out the weak stomach, so prepare yourself. Charlie, the comedian, is going places. That's the punchline. I'll be damned if I can find a proper setup. I mean, what the heck kind of setup can I bring to the table for this? I mean, it's funny. It's kind of dark if you think about it. I don't know. Do you think it's too intelligent? Do you think I should take my name out of the punchline, make it less selfish, more general, so people can empathize with it better? Well, the cabbie simply looks at me as I Gatling gun questions at him. He asked me in his broken English what I did for a living in an effort to make small talk, and I think I may have exhausted his linguistic skills already. He just stared forward and didn't respond at all. And I was about to ask another when the cab stopped, and he spotted the only other words he clearly knew, which consisted of dollar values for the ride. So after plopping some crumpled bills into his hands, I grabbed my one small suitcase from the other seat and stepped out into the cold, late-night air and the loud, annoying sounds of the Los Angeles airport. It had to be almost midnight, and the noise this place was making was like 3 goats and a herd of elephants, mid-coitus, with some excellent reverb. And I stepped through the sliding glass doors, taking an ID in hand, checking with one of those amazing little technological wonders, a self-kiosk. And after it yelled at me in several different languages other than English and warbled for about 10 minutes about how I may or may not be Charlie Masterson, it finally vomited out my boarding pass. Wonders of the modern world! Alright, holding my ass to the security check line while I cracked out Miley Cyrus. Wait, that's redundant. And not only redundant, wouldn't it be running away from security check if I was my, whatever. I ran the TSA check-in and was greeted with a long long line. Oh, the joys of airport security. Removing our shoes in order to enjoy the stank of each other's feet, the chucking of important electronics and private toiletries into those little plastic tubs, and as I struck my way into the giant capsule-like detector and they tell me to lift up my arms, I decide to make a couple of devil horns and rock my head out. Hey, it's the middle of the night, I all but bombed in LA, I'm all but broke. You gotta find the little things that keep you smiling, you know what I'm saying? Unfortunately, the machine and the TSA agent didn't quite agree. It beeped, he yelled, and I got dragged into the side screen, and voila! I'm getting the old touchy-touchy and the crotchy-crotchy by an old man. Hopefully this isn't a sign of the rest of the night. After I willed myself with all the powers of self-control not to respond, when he asked if I had anything to declare, that I declare he had bad dandruff and I could see his Sasquatch butt crack, we finally... The delays had given me just enough time to run at top speed to the gate. You see, this is probably where that Miley joke would have been a whole lot better. I barely managed to get to the door just as they were closing it. Bustling through, I tried to find my aisle seat. I don't know what kind of double-edged sword this was, but in this full flight of jerks, there were 2 empty seats in a row, right next to the emergency exit. Hooray! I get to sit unmolested with no one next to me. Damn it that I have to have the idea that if something were to happen, I have to help out with getting these jerks to safety. I flop into the seat and let out a massive sigh. A red-eye flight out of this place and back to Portland. Charlie, the comedian, was going places. Yeah. After storing the little suitcase under the seat, I settle into my chair and I wiggle around like a dog trying to scratch his butt. You know, you gotta kind of un-ask the last person who's sitting here. So I shut my eyes and I exhale a bit and re-inhale the plane's air. God. Now, I hate airplane air. It doesn't smell rancid or anything, it's actually the opposite. It smells sterile. Like, I'm in the air conditioning system of a hospital, but unlike a hospital, it's not free or roaming, it's pressurized. It's pressed up on you like a big invisible iron lung, filling your lungs with the breath of life, but still smothering you all over. I don't know how other people deal with it, but to me, it's annoying. It's frustrating. It's maddening. I hate it. I hate it. I'm vaguely aware of my cabin mates. They're wrestling, they're crying, they're low murmurs, they're snoring. I hear someone come out of the lavatory sniffling and coughing. How could they possibly handle this irritating air? I'm rustled out of my headspace by a man's voice. "Excuse me," he blurts out testily. My eyes go up and I see a middle-aged man in a Hawaiian shirt and jeans. Oh, Jesus. He's sitting next to me. Great! There goes my one last little bit of silver lining. Jerk. Okay, man, get an ass or crotch? I ask with a sarcastic smirk. "Excuse me?" he says gruffly. I take a look at this guy and instantly realize I'm not going to like him. Hawaiian shirt, jeans, sunglasses over his forehead sitting on a military cut. He's not exactly ugly, but it's clear that he's had his face beat the heck out of over his years. It's clear he's athletic, but he's got this big girth around his shirt. It's like looking at someone's hard-ass retired dad. I don't like him. You know, are you going to shove your crotch or your ass in my face? I just want to know if I need to get a magnifying glass or a gas mask. I realize that my irritation and predisposition towards him are guiding him out. And he's clearly picking up on it based on how he glares down at me without answering. I let out an apology, and I retract my legs. Sorry, man, I'm having a rough day. Guess I can't be a comedian in or out of a gig. Your apology is accepted, he states flatly, and walks through, giving me a face full of ass. Yeah, at least he didn't fart. He plops down with a harumph. Again, man, I'm sorry. Let's not have a bad flight next to each other. Name's Charlie. I put my hand towards him after he's done putting on his seatbelt. Victor, he says, grasping my hand and shaking it. It's like shaking hands with a shaved bear. Good God! I thought he was going to break it off just with his calluses. You know, there's a joke here somewhere about severe friction burn, but I'm going to take the high road with that one. I smirk a bit as I notice the annoying sound of a cat getting strangled while trying to speak Vietnamese at the same time. Oh wait, nope, that's the trashy-looking stewardess telling us the safety features of this POS 740-something, so I wasn't paying attention. I'm a comedian, not a person who pays attention. God, I hate this air. I hear her blather on about the function that we need to be able to do if we're next to the emergency exit, and if we can't perform the function, need to be asked to move. Hey, plane's full. Might as well not even bother. Plus, I have Victor, the jerkface, sitting next to the door anyway. Well, Victor, looks like it's up to you and me to save these people if we go down, I remarked, trying to lighten my faux pas. And judging by how you look and our first impression, I'm guessing I'll be doing all the work while you mouth off. Last thing a plane in danger needs is some guy who thinks he's a comedian, he says. Well, this plane does have a comedian. I mean, that is what I do for a living. Really? Tell me a funny joke, then Chucky the comedian. He cuts off his response with a series of coughs. Is that the consumptions or something? Okay, well, how about this? I bombed so badly in Los Angeles, I'm surprised I didn't get a full cavity search and sent to Homeland Security for being a weapon of mass suckage. I smile wryly at him. Yeah, you're right. He says with only a slight wheeze. Told you I was a comedian. I beam a bit. And about that, about the mass suckage. He faces forward and plops his head on the window. This guy's jerk, I think to myself as he coughs again. As I watch him attempt to evacuate his lungs, I see this disgusting red blotch on his neck. Oh, ew. What is that? Is that the hurt? I'm gonna convince myself that's the hurt. That way when I'm talking about this ass hat on stage, I can have even more convictions. I shut my eyes as the plane gets ready for takeoff. The air is just suffocating, and sitting next to Coffee Hurtman over here is in no way helping me out. Just a few hours, and I'll be back on terra firma, sucking in Portland. I awake to a loud sound. I realize I dozed off. How long could I have been asleep? People are murmuring amongst themselves loudly. Jesus Christ, what part of red eye don't they get? The air is still as oppressive as ever, plain but still thick and heavy. I wonder if people were blathering on, just chewing on that air rather than breathing it. I hear the sound again and notice it's not the talking that woke me up, it was Victor. I look over and see that he's face first in his airsick bag, up-chucking in a symphony of sloppy wet clumps and gargling noises, loud and obnoxious as his vomit's just flying out of his mouth and into the bag. He pulls away and a long, food-laden rope of drool just hangs from his lips, slithering down onto his Hawaiian shirt. Well, that's just perfect camouflage. You doing okay there, Victor? I asked cautiously. Does it look like I'm not okay? He snaps back. I notice bits of snot and food are resting on his upper lip. Clearly, he used every hole to empty his stomach. I hate flying. Stupid job has me doing it, though. His voice is wet and gurgling. What do you do? I ask. That's none of your business. He doesn't even finish the retort when he's back in the bag, letting loose with some serious violence. God, the smell's horrendous. It's like he ate a dead squirrel and then cracked it out and then ate it again with some Arby's. I shudder as the stick fills my nostrils, mixing with that sterile smell, mixing with that great pressure of air, mixing with that sound of all those idiots yammering and his upheavals. Then I see the rash on his neck. At first it was gross, now it was sickening. The rash had covered just the side of his neck when I first saw it, but now I see it covered his entire neck and his lower jaw, and worse, it was populated with these little tiny pustules, small and white or yellow things that undulated with each of his retchings. I swear, any moment those things could pop. What the heck's wrong with him? Worse, is it contagious? You, going through puberty there, bucko? He attempts at an expletive, and instead pukes. Okay, I can't handle this right now. It's too much. I get up and I walk to the lavatory. Somehow the lavatory of a plane always seems to be less confined than the actual cabin, which makes no sense, but hey, nothing in this world does. Like Victor's stomach pyrotechnics and his... what is that on his neck? I relieve myself and I wash up. I toss some water onto my face, and I wipe up. I look in the mirror at myself and I try to smile. And it's hard. It's hard to smile. But hey, you know, I'm a comedian, I gotta smile. How can I make someone else smile if I can't? So I force myself to. There we go. Charlie the comedian. The sucky comedian screwed up his chance in LA. I wipe the moisture from the rest of my face and I straighten up. And then my suspicions about Victor get a hard kick in the balls, because there on my neck, red, bright red, a rash right on my neck. That was there before, right? Right? Of razor burn. Yeah, it was razor burn. No, it's too late for that. Not this time of night, I would have noticed it by now. Oh, Victor gave me something. Whatever's messing him up is getting ready to pummel me. God, no. Oh. Okay. I think that's some control here, Charlie the comedian. You're going home, you're gonna get this checked out, you're gonna get this thing checked out of the free clinic, and then you're gonna go bomb somewhere else. But at least be home. Oh, this air, it's insufferable, sterile, chunky air is in the lavatory of the airplane too. Oh, okay, I walk out of the lavatory. I want to sigh, I want to take a deep breath, but no, I'm not going to let more of this air back into me than I have to. I make my way back to my seat right next to Victor. Victor, the vomit machine. Victor, the man whose neck is covered in pustule rashes. Victor, the dick who probably gave me something. I sit down, and he's no longer puking, thank God. He's asleep, just laying his head against the emergency exit's window, just awkwardly stretched, since the window was a good foot away from the seat, just awkwardly stretched out, giving me a full view of his nasty-looking neck, just giving me every raised bit of red skin, every globe of yellowish pus, every bit of whatever infection that he's given to me. No, I'm not that bad. Am I gonna get that bad? I mean, do I even have it? God, I don't know. I want to shake him awake. I want to ask him what he has. Oh, God, this air. I reach out, I grab his arm, and I give it a shake. And then I need to know what the hell's in your neck. And just as I finish that last word, he snaps his face towards me. I think he says, "Dude, stop," or something sleepily, but I'm not listening. No, all I'm focused on is that one of those pustules burst open like a water balloon on his neck, squirting a stream of clear fluid mixed with swirls of cadaverous white pus right onto the hand that I shook him with, like some sort of defense mechanism. I feel the warm stream slide slowly down my hand, leaving a wet trail on my skin as it aims to fall on the floor. Then I lose it. My hand flies to the sick bag, and I feel my throat engorge with the content of my stomach. I feel bile and stomach acid mixed with food fill my mouth and nose as it hurls out of my face and into the bag, heaving repeatedly in sloppy wet clumps, just like Victor. Just like Victor. I pull away when I'm devoid of anything. God, I can still smell the air through my own vomit. How can I smell the air through my own vomit? I look to Victor, and he's back asleep already. He didn't even clean that pus wound on his neck. The hole breathes when he breathes, opening and closing as his neck rises and falls with his breaths. Breathing in this damn air. How can he be so calm and sleeping when he's clearly diseased? I don't know what he's giving me. I don't know if I can take another second in this air, this sterile air. What's he giving me? What's he infected me with? Just by sitting next to me. And how much worse is it gonna get now that he's touched me? We're gonna end up infecting this entire plane, a sterile, air-ridden plane. I gotta get away. There's no place to sit, no place to go. The laboratory's filled with the air too. The cockpit's filled with the air. The below deck is filled with the air. It's pressurized air. It's everywhere. It's circulating this disease with Victor. It's giving it to everyone. I'm marinating. I'm incubating in it. The only safe place is gonna be outside. Outside the plane. Outside Silver Lining. We're sitting right next to the damn emergency exit. Oh, Silver Lining. I'm feeling my hand down to the door's emergency handle and yank up as hard as I can. I'll see you in the funny pages, jerkbags. Enjoy your disease. I'm getting out of here because Charlie, the comedian, is going places. Did you like that one? Was it too gross? Did we weed out the weak stomachs? Okay. So here's one. I've only done this one at one other convention before. Here's something that's really interesting about horror, and that I usually talk about in my writing panel. But since I don't have it here, I'm going to try doing this right now. So there's a really interesting thing about horror. Not everybody's afraid of the same things. So like, I like doing gross stories because it's just fun for me. Gross is fun. I like doing gore stories because gore stories are fun for me. I like doing stories that kind of sit in your mind like a thought experiment because those are really fun. It's kind of more of a psychological feel. There's some stories that don't exactly work for everybody. Like there's really popular creepypasta monsters. Laughing Jack's one of them. He kind of plays to it. Okay, so this side of the room like Laughing Jack. And Laughing Jack's one of them. He kind of plays to one of these fears of clowns. And not everybody here is afraid of clowns. Is anybody afraid of clowns? Raise your hand. Let me just see. Everybody take a look around, which means that there's a couple people that are afraid of clowns. Anybody here afraid of cockroaches? Raise your hand. More people raise your hands for cockroaches. Let's try something else. Anybody here afraid of water? Hydrophobia? Anybody afraid of water? Cool, we got a couple people afraid of water. Here's an interesting thing. If anybody looked around, you saw how many hands are raised up for each thing. Nobody raised their hand for everything. And there's a bunch of people who didn't raise their hand for anything. So horror is something that's very subjective. Some people are afraid of something, some people aren't afraid of anything. Some people are afraid of like things they don't even know about. So it's really hard for me to kind of find stories that everybody can be afraid of. Thought experiment is one of those things, because the majority of people are at least afraid of dying, or being forgotten. The last one, Charlie the Comedian, everybody kind of has somewhat of a fear of flying, because that's one of the stories I literally pulled out when I was flying on an airplane. This is one story I love to do, mostly for the people that raise their hands for, who here is afraid of spiders? Have fun. I remember that half-awake moment of confusion very vividly. I groaned, blinked, and moved my mouth around as I clearly stared up at the dark ceiling. There was some sort of hair or something on my lip, pulling at it. I felt a subtle, slippery tug in my throat, and it took another 3 seconds to slide the whole thread out. Disgusted and confused, I held it up to the silver of the moonlight. How was this thing? Some unknown girl's hair? No, it was wispier than that, more reflective and a little sticky. I felt suddenly queasy at the thought when it occurred to me that this was probably a silken spider's thread. I think I had just eaten a spider in my sleep. Oh, Jesus Christ. I got up that night refusing to go back to sleep, but the day's light dispelled my silly fears. If I had eaten a spider, it was long dead by now thanks to the stomach acid generously donated by my long night of anxiety. A few weeks passed. I had almost forgotten about the incident. I noticed that very slowly, I began having I had trouble exercising at my usual rate. I was sleeping worse and groggy even when I did sleep. I thought that it might just be the season or allergies, and I tried to ignore it until I fell asleep at work and my boss sternly told me to go to the doctor. I was never one for the doctor, but I was tired of being tired. So I finally manned up and I went. I sat in a stark white office waiting for quite some time. I figured the doctor probably wouldn't have any answers for me. They never seemed to care. But I was hoping for at least a prescription or something. I sat still as the nurse did all the usual tests, blood pressure, pulse, and so on. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary. She left, and I waited some more. Finally, the doctor walked in and greeted me without looking. She asked about my symptoms, nodded a bit, then used a stethoscope to listen to my chest, and that's when she frowned. Not the allergies, or even asthma. Sounds a bit scratchy in there. Yeah, see, that's what I thought, I told her. I've been racking my brain. For a while, I even thought it was a spider that I ate. She glanced up at me, making eye contact for the first time. You ate a spider? Yeah, in my sleep, I think. She hesitated. Now, there's this new spider infestation, African, I think. We've had a couple of bad reactions to bites. Total long shot here, but if it bit your esophagus or stomach, you wouldn't feel it. But you could still have a reaction. Let's get a soft tissue scan. Confused and worried, but hopeful, I followed her advice and went to the next building over in the complex for the scan. The hour queue allowed me to fill out every form and exhaust every magazine in the small waiting room before they finally called me up. I followed the attendant rarely into the imaging room. I'd seen it on television, sure, but the experience was far more intense than it looked. I had to lie still for quite some time, fighting all sorts of sudden urges to itch, sneeze, or cough while I waited. By the time it was over, I felt a built-up coughing fit coming on. The smiling attendant came in, told me I did a great job, and started checking things. All right, I sighed. It was over. Time to get up and get out of here. Another attendant peeked in the door. A doctor stood behind him. They both motioned for their colleague, and I found myself momentarily alone. I sat up, watching them confer in hushed tones just outside. The three approached me. We're gonna need you to come with us real quick. It's not an emergency, we just need to speak to you in private. Feeling hot from my approaching coughing fit, I followed them to a small room where they directed me to sit and handed me a biohazard waste bin. Why don't you close your eyes and cough into this trash can, all right, son? The doctor told me, his tone quivering. And whatever you do, just keep your eyes closed. It's important that you don't look for radiological reasons from the imaging machine. Yeah, the machine, an attendant echoed. The mass sphere had my pulse racing, but I was more than ready to start coughing to ease the pain in my throat. Leaning over the waste bin, I began to cough, heavy, hacking, letting out endless coughing breaths that seemed filled with weird dust and particles. Had I accidentally breathed in something radioactive from this machine? I kept coughing, and I tasted a little blood. I paused. I breathed in and out. They urged me to keep coughing, their voices shaking and subtly disgusted. Come on, just a little more, son, the doctor told me. His practiced hands trembled on my shoulders. The last cough seemed to spasm my whole body, and I felt clotted particles rise up my throat and finally escape. Spitting and pushing more air out through my mouth, I got the last of it out of me. Feeling more relaxed, I made the mistake of relaxing and opening my eyes. The doctor saw me staring down and gripped my shoulders tight. Don't panic, you're safe now. It's just that we saw the note about the spider you ate. We did look at your stomach, but your stomach was fine. It was, well, they're attracted to moving air, see, and it made webs in your lungs. In shock, I nodded, unable to do anything but stare at the 3-inch thick pile of baby spiders rolling around in the bottom of the waste bin. That's so cute! I got one more. This is a long one. This is actually one of my favorite stories I've ever done. If you guys, there's a lot of stories that are up on my channel. There's these kind of really amazing psychological horror stories that always get overlooked. And this is one of them. This is one of the stories I really love. I really, really love, but it always kind of gets overlooked. If you guys ever want to check out some of these ones, I have a playlist on my SoundCloud. It's called Hidden Gems. And the Hidden Gems playlist is all about these really amazing psychological horror stories that don't really feature like a single killer, but they're amazing stories that really you should check out.
So move real quick, I have a quick announcement.
Oh, I'm gonna stay here and watch you with them too.
We are gonna need to have you guys leave by sections and by rows, so nobody crowds it, okay? Because we're gonna have to lock down the auditorium for right now to the next act. So we're gonna start with this side and then work our way this way, okay? I do apologize for that, but that side first. He will be at the next show. So if y'all want to come, he will be here in the audience so you can see him again. So give him a round of applause again.
Okay, I will find you in a little bit. Let me have fun with